All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And so welcome everybody, and I apologize for the lack of video quality today in a little bit different venue. I had to go pick up my child at school. He got stung by a wasp, so he is now hyped up on, or he's not hyped up, he's sacked out on Benadryl. So we are going to get started. So this is our second session of the 4-H orientation, and today we are going to talk about, sorry, my clock is going off too. We're going to talk about the use of the 4-H name and emblem, because I think it's an important piece that everybody knows kind of from the beginning what the rules are about the 4-H name and emblem. And then also we're going to talk about risk management, and then one of our youth development concepts that are really important in 4-H called the 4-H essential elements. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up the name and emblem. Okay, so does anybody on here, and I'm gonna have to keep an eye on the chat box while I'm doing this as well, but does anybody know, or if you have microphone, what is special about the 4-H name and emblem? You can type it into the chat box. Okay, good. It's protected by federal law. Yes. So I'm going to explain to you what that means. So it is protected under federal statute Title 18 USC 7, which is US Code 707. And it is one of 3 federally protected emblems in the country. The other 2, any guesses on what the other 2 are? Okay, presidential seal, yes. Good job, Jasmine. Does anybody know what the other one is? Okay, well, it is the Olympic rings. So we've got the presidential seal, the 4-H name and emblem, and the presidential seal are the only 3 protected the way they are. And what that means is you cannot change them in any way. So you cannot, and you also have to have authorization to use the name and emblem. So part of that is you cannot use the words 4-H club or 4-H clubs unless you have proper authorization, or you cannot use the emblem. And that is, if you do, that is a fine of up to $5,000 for individuals, and also, or up to $10,000 for clubs, and it can be up to 10 years in prison. The ways that the intent to defraud, that's kind of what they look at. And those are impersonating, like if you have somebody that's impersonating themselves as a 4-H professional or representative of a club or a club member when they truly are not. Changing the clover in any way, which includes changing the color, the shape of the leaves, the H's inside, etc. And it's also, again, you know, it's you have to have that permission. So how you do that is, so if it's a county-based permission, like a club wants to use a name and emblem, essentially their charter is what gives them that permission. But it's also so you are allowed to give that name and emblem permission. If there is something that's going to go across county lines, so say you want, say you have a group that wants to use the name and emblem for, well, an example that we had was, a couple of examples that I've had. One that we had a meat processor. So they bought livestock at the sale, and then they took the animals from the sale. They would purchase the animals. They were a floor buyer, and that company had an ad on TV that ran in 4 or 5 different counties because it was, the region, and talking about how they come by their products because they supported 4-H and FFA at the livestock sale. Well, they actually got turned into USDA for that ad, and we had to go in and talk to them about the proper use, that they really didn't have permission to use the name and emblem, to use the word 4-H, because part of it is we're going to talk about this, but part of that is because they had they were implying endorsement, and it made a profit for them, and they needed to get permission to use that. I've also had another company that's a multi-county company that would use the 4-H name and emblem in a good way. They had a blog on their company website, and they would talk about the things that are coming up for 4-H and FFA, and they would talk about things that were happening, and they would highlight kids that were doing great things. And so we just had to go in and talk to them about the fact that it's great that you're doing this, but you need to get that permission to use that name and emblem. I mean, we granted them permission, but they can be turned into USDA. We also had another one when I was in another state that the baker wanted to make cookies and use the 4-H emblem in the middle of the cookies and sell them through her bakery, and the state leader at that time in that state denied them that access because, number one, they weren't willing to give any of the money back. I will get to you in just one sec, Louisa. And then the other thing, so they weren't going to give any money back to 4-H, and it was going to be just purely profit for their own business. So Louisa, you had a question. If you want to type it in the chat box, or if you have a microphone, you can ask it. Either way. Okay. Oh, okay. No, but you were learning the different sections of the system, so not a problem. So just a couple of examples, and these are, and honestly, when I put this PowerPoint together years ago, and all 3 of these symbols I have done myself over the years. One was I took, I love this one where the 4-H clover is kind of gradient. It has a gradual, where it starts dark green in the middle and goes out to white. Even though the clover is okay, you cannot change the color. The orange is not allowed, and then the marble, even though it's green, there are specific colors of green that the clover has to be. Now, the funny thing about this story is, so the orange clover that I have here, I was doing this presentation one time it was a face-to-face presentation, and in front of a group of new educators and new 4-H professionals. And we were in the middle of our, here it'd be Discover Your Future. We were in the middle of a big statewide event, and I had my conference t-shirt on, and all of a sudden they looked at me and they said, "So what you're wearing is illegal." And I looked down and realized we had done navy blue shirts with turquoise writing, and the clover was on the sleeve in turquoise. And I went, "You're exactly right." Nobody had caught it. So believe me, there are times that we don't catch it, and you're not going to be thrown in jail for those times. It's when you intentionally do it, that's when you can get into trouble. The other thing that we always use, that seems really like a cool idea, I haven't seen it in a while, but so many times people will use, in their newsletters, they'll use the clover as a watermark behind, because, hey, how else are you going to get the clover on there? It looks really cool. Well, you cannot put anything on top of the clover. So I see something in the chat box. So if we ordered shirts from a vendor other than the 4-H mall, yes, the USC, or the 18 USC 707 has to be printed on there. That is a requirement of the clover. There's actually a couple of examples, and I don't have one in here, but there is a Clover that you can download off the National 4-H website that has the USC 7 or the 18 USC 707 across the, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but it's across the bottom. As I'm looking at the Clover, the bottom right hand, it goes right along the edge of that leaf. And when I'm printing, whenever I print things like a T-shirt or or something like that, then I will typically use that Clover because it looks cleaner. The other piece, now if the Clover is going to be too small for you to read it, like one example is, and I don't have it here, the National 4-H Mall sells some soft shell jackets, and the Clover is embroidered on the collar of that soft shell jacket. And that, because the Clover is so small on that, you would not be able to see the 18 USC, the code, and so they don't require it on that. And typically in embroidery, that's kind of a case-by-case basis. The one thing that I want to just share, if you ever are doing anything and you have any questions about the use of the name and emblem, please feel free to ship them off to me. Send me a quick email with the picture or whatever you're doing, and I'll let you know yes or no that is legal or not legal to use. I laugh because I still get those from some of my colleagues in Idaho. Some of the 4-H professionals up there will send me, hey, can you just look at this? Because I will tell you, I've been called the Clover Nazi and the Clover police many, many times. So, yeah, okay, chat. Is the National Mall the same as the 4-H Mall? Yes. 4hmall.com, yes. That is, sorry, the National 4-H Council runs the 4-H Mall, and so you'll hear me call it either way. National 4-H Council tends to sell a lot of things. And just really quick, for those of you that have joined, because it looks like we had quite a few people join after we got, just right as we were getting started, if you can quickly put your name and your county in the chat box, that way I've got a record of who's on, because I like to keep that record. But just a couple of things wrong with the Clovers. What's wrong with this Clover, the one that's up there right now? Any ideas of what's wrong with it? Okay, it looks slanted and it's a watermark, yep. Or they put the name of the 4-H club in front of it. Sometimes we will see that, and if you have a club, what you should always do, if you have a club that wants to design a T-shirt or anything, make them run the design by you first. It's not a requirement, but I would, if I were you in the county, I would make it a requirement. That way we've got things that you can catch those types of things quicker. An example, so we were at a 4-H, we were at a state Lego robotics tournament, and it's not a 4-H sponsored event, or it's 4-H puts on the Lego robotics tournament, but we were there and we had one of our 4-H teams. They had the cutest like camouflage T-shirts with the name of their group and their, but the Clover was hunter orange, and so you can't, and the Clover's stretched too, yeah. So you can't do that, even though, because on the had somebody looked at it beforehand, they could have said, you need to make that Clover white. You can have all the other stuff, but the Clover has to be white, or it has to be black, or it has to be green. I'm going to share with you guys, and I just discovered this, I'll be honest with you today, there is a new national name and emblem guide that is outstanding. And so it will give you all the exact colors of what you need. But okay, here's another Clover. Again, this one is stretched. It's kind of fat. And then we have one that's kind of thin. So when you are enlarging the clover, make sure that you are grabbing it by the corners and not by the, when you've got the box, you're taking it by the corners and stretching it out, and you're not grabbing it by one of the sides and stretching it. Okay, so here is a good clover, and it's in black. Okay, I'm checking the chat box. Always hit shift when you do. Yes, thank you. Must the code be the same color as the clover? Honestly, you're never going to find a 4-H logo that it's not the same color as the clover. And so, whenever you have one, when you're pulling up the clip art, it's always going to be the same color. So you're not going to run into that issue. But that's a good question. They've never really said whether it had to be or it didn't, but it just is, it's always, in all the clip art, it is always the same color. And then here is the website. And so I'm going to send this to you, this link, so you've got it, but I will show you what that looks like. It is, like I said, it's one of the best that I have seen in a really long time. I just have to find it, sorry. Let's see. I've got too many things open. Okay. Well, let's try this. Well, okay. Nope. We're not going to do that yet. I'm going to pull it up so I've got it. Okay. So now I can share my screen with you guys. I don't usually do this from with only one screen. I usually have 3 screens up. So this is the guidelines, and it is 13 pages long. You'd never really, this is for non-extension entities, but honestly, I think it's really a good piece for you to see, for you to use as well. Sorry, I'm scrolling down really quick. I know that makes you guys sick, but this talks about the legislative authority. And then becoming an authorized user. This is one of the pieces that I like about it. It talks about the way you want to, how you want to use it. Typically, it will come, more than likely it's going to come, unless it's a club or an affiliate, it's going to come to the county or come to the state office for that approval. If it is going to cross state lines, then it would go to USDA for that approval. And there's been a couple of examples. When I was in Michigan, we had a candy company in our area that started making candy bars with the 4-H clover in it, and we had permission within the state because it was a fundraiser for that county. Well, they actually worked on and were able to get, this was years and years ago, so I don't think they do them anymore, but they got permission from USDA to do the same thing. So if I wanted to buy them, they were great presenter gifts. So we could get those, and so we could buy, or they had to go to USDA. And you can see there's authorization criteria. There's a couple. This is what I wanted to show you. When you have companies or groups come to you and ask, and you will, because 4-H Name and Emblem is one of the most widely popular emblems. People know it, and they know that they can make money off of it because 4-H people come and buy a lot of different things. So these are the types of things for materials or merchandise that typically will be approved depending on their information. But if you have, and then down here is essentially, they have to understand that they do not, that there's no endorsement, if they do use it. But down here are examples of things that are not going to receive permission to use the name and emblem. So just so you're aware of those. And then okay. Sorry. Oh, okay. my phone was going off and I was hoping it wasn't any of you. In here, it talks about the color. Okay, here's the guidelines. So the 4H needs to be 4-H. If you are beginning a sentence, and I loved the way they talked about this, I had not seen this before, you know, if you are starting a sentence, you know, with the 4H, then you would actually write out 4-H. So, and you do not want to leave the 4- and then the H on the next line. Sometimes you have to manually go in and fix that. And you do not use the emblem in place of the word 4H in a text or title. And then here are some things about the emblem. And I was going to show you, you can't remove the leaves. Here, it gives you examples of inappropriate use, appropriate use. You can look at that, but it talks about, here's the colors. So the clover can be green, it can be white, it can be black, or it can be metallic gold. And then the H's on the clover are the same way. Now, I will tell you, if you're printing on a piece of colored paper, like, so say you're printing stuff on, you know, everything's in black and white, but you're printing on a piece of pink paper, your H's are obviously going to be pink because typically, unless your clover has white H's, and you can do that. If you're printing a shirt, you are better off to try to have them do the H's in black or in white, depending on how you're doing that. And then it gives you the colors of how you know, the different colors. So I just wanted to share that with you. Like I said, I will be sending a copy of that for you to use, you know, to have on hand. All right. Any questions about the use of the name and emblem? Like I said, when in doubt, send it to me and I will look at it and let you know yes or no, or, you know, maybe, and I've had them send club stuff to me before too, and just said, yes, you know, this is appropriate. No, it's not appropriate. So don't hesitate. That takes me 2 seconds to look at. All right. If we don't have questions there, we are going to move to my ever favorite topic that I know everybody loves. And because it is risk management. So when I was doing my PhD, they always laughed because a lot of my papers were on risk management in youth development programs. And, you know, we're really fortunate in 4-H in the fact that we don't have a lot of lawsuits. I did a paper in higher education law and I had to talk about lawsuits, and there were very few lawsuits within 4-H and risk. There are a few, and I'll talk about some of those as we're going through this, but for the most part, and it's because we are so diligent about training our staff, and you should be training your volunteers on risk management. So what is risk? Risk is the chance of loss. And I love this, I just love this picture because that cat is taking a large, large risk. So some of the risks, I mean, we know that we all take risks every day. We take a risk by getting out of bed in the morning. We take a risk if we drink a cup of coffee. We all know the McDonald's and hot coffee. We take a risk every day driving to and from work. And we also, you know, each one of us have chosen to take a risk in running a program that involves kids who need adequate and basic safety and handling. You know, oh, this is actually from shooting sports, but it's still, you know, we are still taking on that risk of, you know, we have kids that we have taken the responsibility for. So risk management. What is risk management? It's the process that we use to protect our assets by minimizing the potential for negative outcomes. So what that means is our 4-H clubs and our groups or planning committees need to think about what risk management is they're thinking about what are the potential risks, and then they figure out how to manage those risks. It's also, risk is, the uncertainty of a future event that threatens your organization's ability to accomplish its mission. I can't talk today. There's a lot of unexpected things that happen. Things happen, and we know that they're going to happen. But we want to do everything in our power to start with talk about minimizing that risk, both for our participants, the spectators, the properties that we're using, and also the reputation of 4-H. So why is it important? It's important because it ensures the safety of our youth and our adults in our program. It's, besides safety, it also elevates our allocation of resources, as we don't have to spend as much money on other things, or we can, there's a lot of money that's lost sometimes in lawsuits. I think about other youth organizations that have lost a lot of money and paid out a lot of money because they didn't think about risk before they started. It also becomes an important component of our work that we focus on safety and prevention. It drives a lot of people crazy because many times the first question I ask is, okay, so what are the risks involved? Even in my own personal life, because I've been doing this now for so long, risk management is like my first thing I think of. And in fact, the other day, we were at my son's football game a couple Saturdays ago, and we had a young man on our team run off the field, and holding his arm and crying, and our coaches ran up to him, and they were like, we need a medic now. I think we have a broken arm, which we did have a broken arm, but they did not have a medic on or have anybody trained in first aid, or had, our coaches are kind of trained, but they didn't have anybody that could come and look at it right away. We had one of our parents came down who, had some kind of medical training, but, that was the first thing I thought of is, oh my gosh, they should have, this is a football game. They should have a medic or have somebody at least trained in first aid that is here that can take care of these things. And also it allows us to focus really more of our attention on achieving our mission. If we're taking care of risk, then we don't have to deal with it later. So the forms of risk, there's physical risk, those things that can create bodily harm. We have a reputation. Those are risk of losing confidence or trust in the organization. We all know what happened to the Boy Scouts and the reputation that they lost when they, with their reputation. They're starting to come back, but there was some issues there. The emotional risk, the risk of participants feeling upset, uncomfortable, embarrassed. This is the one that I probably see, and this sounds really funny, but I probably see this more in 4-H than I do in a lot of places. And where I see it so often is at like statewide events or camp, when you have a kid that loses a name tag. This was one that I saw all the time. Kids would lose a name tag. And what happens to kids when they lose a name tag at a statewide event? Anybody want to take a guess? You guys are quiet today. I'm trying to get some interaction here. What happens when they lose a name tag? Okay, no one knows where they are, yeah. They get called up to claim it. What do they do when they get called up to claim it? What happens? They sing, they have to do something to get it back. Okay, what if you have, and I've seen this, we had an autistic kid, an autistic young person that lost their name tag. Got called up, only one of the day. They tried to make him sing for his name tag. In fact, we were at a statewide event, our state youth conference in Idaho, and we had a group of about probably 10 kids up there. This was one of the first days that they had lost something, and they made them get up on stage, and this was from an adult. This wasn't even from the kids necessarily. I mean, the kids kind of instigated it, but the adult in charge said, or they were writing their names with their butts, pointed out towards the audience. And I walked up and I looked at that adult and I said, you will stop this right now. That is not appropriate. You need, and because number one, it's emotional risk. Nobody likes to have their butt facing an audience, especially their butt sticking out facing an audience. And number two, it was awful. And I've seen it many times. I've seen it so many times over the years. And I also proceeded to let them know that that was sexual harassment and that was not allowed. That's again a bullying issue. And so, that's been done for, gosh, I've been doing this 25 years, 23 years, and I saw it when I was a kid. So yeah, they've been doing that for, maybe it's just an Idaho thing, I don't know, but don't ever do it. It's horrible. In fact, when in North Dakota, when we did our youth conference, I just told the kids, you know what? No, we're not going to make kids come up and sing anything. They are not going to have to do anything to get their name tag. They have to come up on stage and get it from you, but they do not have to do anything to get it back. So just think about that as you're pondering. Yes, it's fun. I mean, I've never laughed so hard in my life as this was back when I first started, and we were all young and, naive and still didn't really know a lot. But they could, and even having them do the pledge, if they have to do it by themselves, that can cause them, some people don't like to get in front of a group and do things by themselves. So you also have to know your kids. But anyway, so we had a chaperone, a young chaperone, like probably 25 maybe, that lost his name tag, and they made him get up and write his name with his butt. And I've never laughed so hard in my life, but it was not appropriate for him to be doing. Number one, he was an adult doing it, and number two, it's just not appropriate. But anyway, so, sometimes it's funny, but it's just, And then we also have financial risk, any risk associated with money. That comes in why we are so strict on raising money, why we're so strict. And people always ask, why are the rules changing, and why do you need to know how much money my club has? Well, it's because of risk management. And we have to be so much more cautious about that anymore than we used to. So important risk management terms. So one of them, the biggest one, is liability. This is the one you're going to hear the most often. And so that means that we are legally bound or responsible, something for which one is liable, an obligation, a responsibility, or a debt. So some forms of liability include negligence. So that's a failure to use a degree of care which an ordinary person would use under the given circumstances. So that is and we'll go through some examples, but one of the, if you know that, like in shooting sports, if you know that there is a firearm that is misfiring and you do not get it fixed right away, and also the kids don't necessarily know which one, you don't either get it fixed right away or take it out of the rotation so the kids are not using it, then you can be held liable for negligence because you knew that it was not working. There's also assault and battery. Now, we don't, typically the one that 4-H runs into the most often is negligence, but there's also false arrest and imprisonment, invasion of privacy, defamation. Now, we have run into some defamation issues in the past. Nothing that I've ever seen go to court, but things that could go to court, and then violation of constitutional rights. Any questions on the liability? Because next we're going to move to risk management strategies. So these are just some ways, as you're thinking about some of these risk management issues, these are some things to think about. One, you can reduce the risk, so to lessen the extent or remove the hazards. So I don't know if you guys can see this picture very well, but this is basically they modified the program or the facility, such as adding a fence to separate the public from the animals in the show ring. This picture is actually taken at the Washington State University Grizzly Bear research facility that they have on campus. And I took a group of students over there. Sorry, my back is, I'm right in the middle of something in my back. But so what they did is the grizzly bears are in their own containment. You know, they've got their own area, but they've also got a second fence that's even taller on the, you know, that's like 5 feet from that or 3 feet from that one. They also have the signs up everywhere that say danger, wild animals, you know. Now, granted, is that going to stop everybody from, you know, because you're going to get stupid idiots, you know, you're going to get idiotic people that don't know what they're doing. And they're going to try to go play with the grizzly bears because, man, they are cute, especially the cubs. But you can't, you know, but this is one way. Or if you've got, if you're doing a show and you don't necessarily have like a designated show ring that's permanent, you can put up panels, and then you can also do a perimeter fence around that, you know, even just using yellow caution tape. It's the reason that we do it in shooting sports, where we do the, where we map out the range, and they can't, you know, people can't go in that range area. Okay, so we transfer the risk. So this is when we shift all or part of the risk to another party. So insurance is typically a common method for that risk transfer, but there are other things. When we charter a bus, you know, if we're like when we go to 4-H camp, this is why many times if you're taking a large group to camp or to another event, this is why we say it's better to charter a bus, because what that does is it takes the liability off of the 4-H program and it transfers it to the bus company. And they are because, you know, we've turned it into, or we've given that liability over to them. And then holding the meeting in a public place instead of in your home, you know, so if like many clubs have meetings at the extension office instead of in the leaders' homes. And what that does is it puts the liability back on whatever that public place is, instead of in your own, you know, for volunteers instead of in their own home. You can avoid activities. Sometimes it is just important to remove a hazard. Sometimes, you know, or have an alternate activity. So one example, replace a night hike with a daytime activity. There was a group, I've worked with a group that at camp, they always did nighttime capture the flag. Well, again, probably not appropriate because they're running through the woods at night with small, you know what kind of flashlights kids bring to camp. They're not, you know, good, high-powered, the kind that you should be using in the woods at night. They're the kind that take you from your cabin to the bathroom without getting hurt, but not, you know, going through the middle of the woods. So, and the nurse finally said, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And so we finally had to step in, you know, try not to step in and do those kinds of things, but finally had to step in and tell that camp director, you know what, that's not appropriate. You have too many kids getting hurt. You know, I did the same thing one year with dodgeball. They always did dodgeball at one of the statewide events. After the 4th time I took a child to the clinic for injuries of dodgeball, I said, sorry, no more dodgeball. I know it's mean, and, you know, I tend to be called meanie. Oh, Karen, no, we can't do that. Well, if you don't have kids getting hurt and, you know, everything's safe, you've taken care of all the issues, I'm okay with it. But, you know, when you, like I said, when you have, when I took 4 kids to the emergency room or to the clinic to be taken care of for injuries from dodgeball, I thought, you know what, no, we're just done. And we discontinued that activity. And then sometimes you just assume risk. So sometimes you just say, you know what, we know that there's a risk here and it's okay. We will just assume that that risk is, that we're going to do that. And an example, you've taken all the necessary precautions and you conduct the event. So this is a group of kids in a high ropes course, or doing a high ropes course. This was the one many of you have heard me talk about. I hate heights and I will not do a high ropes course. And so the only time I got the opportunity to even attempt it, I was pregnant and they wouldn't let me. Again, they assumed, or they decided that the risk was too high for me to go. But as you can see, the kids are all tethered on, they've all got their harnesses on, they have helmets on, they are going in groups, there's always somebody on the ends, helping to help someone across. So they really, this company did a good job with the risk. We also all had to sign a waiver waiver of liability, a waiver. So they did what they needed to do. So just a few things about our liability, just because we always get questions about protection. And so only our authorized volunteers are entitled to the protection of the university or the state's liability insurance. So what that is they have to have completed, this is why it's one of the reasons why it's so critical that they complete the liability or complete the application before and get their background checked and get all of the paperwork in before they start working with kids on their own. If not, without a certified volunteer, they're not going to be covered under the university's liability insurance. Authorized volunteers who have been asked to perform a specific function then have that ability, or then they are covered. An example of this that we've always used is, so if you're at the fair and you need a pig, you need a pig panel moved, and there may not be a certified volunteer there, but you as the 4-H person the 4-H professional or the county educator have looked at a parent and said, hey, can you grab the other end of this so we can move this panel to the other end of the barn or whatever, and something happens and that person gets hurt, then that person is covered. Or maybe they hit a kid with the panel because they, and on accident, and that person is covered under the liability insurance because of the fact that you asked them to do that specific task. Now, granted, if they just grabbed it on their own and moved it, then they would not be covered because you did not ask them to do it. You have to specifically ask them. And then also, they have to be acting within they're protected only when they're acting within the scope and the course of their volunteer service. This is another reason why position descriptions are really important for our program, because that way our volunteers know what their responsibilities are. If we've got a rabbit leader that all of a sudden is, they're leading a rabbit group, and all of a sudden, they start helping in the pig barn or in the beef barn, and something happens and they haven't, that's a little bit questionable, but they need to be doing something within the scope of their program. And then they have to have gone through and completed all of the paperwork. So there's some special areas of consideration. We know that there are areas that are specific. One is shooting sports, and we do have a whole set of guidelines in shooting sports for people that they have to, they have to have ear protection, they got to have eye protection, they need, there are steps that they have to follow, they have the range set up. So if they have not followed those guidelines, then yes, they can be held, that person who is in charge can be held liable because of negligence. That's why it's so critical that's why we require our shooting sports volunteers to go through a special certification by only specific people. Another one would be like a water sport event. This picture actually happens to be, and this is one that, we had to change at the last minute. We had a group that was going to go kayaking as a class at a statewide event. Well, at the time when the class was held, it was fine up until about 2 days before the class was going to be held, and the river ended up just raging, and they couldn't go kayaking on the river. And so the instructor had to all of a sudden change plans, got a hold of the university pool, and they went kayaking in the pool. So again, that's one change of plans that happens. Sometimes those things happen. The other piece is every kid had to have the life jacket on. That's why, at 4-H camp, Kent is so, he's very, very strict about life jackets and about jumping off the dock. And, and there's reasons for that. Again, it's a risk management issue. So the important part is to have a risk management plan. This is, I think it's important for our clubs to do this. In shooting sports, it is required that they turn in a risk management plan. This year, you will be hearing more about that. Last year, with the switchover, we weren't real diligent about that, but this year we are going to be very diligent. Your shooting sports clubs will need to turn in a risk management plan. But as I looked on the website, there are outstanding tools that are on there to help you. There's a risk management checklist that's on there, and there are information about what happens there. And one of the things I just noticed today actually is one of the forms that you have to fill out if there is an accident is not, the link is broken, so I need to have Kiana fix that. But there are forms. If you do have an accident at a 4-H club or at a county event, there is an incident report that needs to be completed and sent in, and it tells you where to send it. The only thing it doesn't tell you is it does not say anything about letting the state office know, and that's something that I'm going to be fixing, because I do want to know when there is something that happens, even at the club level. And part of that could be just sending a copy of the incident report in, send a copy of it to me when you also send it to the others, because of the fact that if something were to come up legally, I need to know that that's happening. An example, about, probably 7 or 8 years ago now, we had a club that was doing a pumpkin carving event, and we had a young man that cut his finger. And cut it very severely, had to go into the doctor, and then he ended up having to see a specialist and having surgery because of the nerve damage from this knife. Well, this happened, obviously, October 29th probably, and we did not find out about the incident at the state level until we got the paperwork from the attorney, this volunteer's attorney, suing the university and 4-H for this, because she had some issues with insurance, and in the two, she switched insurances, and neither one were going to cover it, and so she sued the university. But we were completely ill prepared for that, and so knowing that information is really important. And again, involving your youth and adults in developing that risk management plan, I think, is really important. I think it's good. If you have a countywide event, you should go through that risk management plan and that checklist. I'm actually going to, is there any questions about that really quick? Okay. The one thing I do want to say, there's just a couple more people that joined us, and so if you did, if you could just take a minute and put your name and address name and county, in the chat box, that would be fantastic. And I can't find it, so I'm not going to worry about it. I did save the documents from the website that I will that I will put on the Dropbox for you guys, so it is easy access for those risk management pieces. But just really quick about chaperones, you know, there's always questions about chaperones and who can chaperone. I didn't really find a lot of like guidelines, but I would like, here's some recommendations. Number one, there really should be one adult for every 10 youth. And this is really true even at club meetings, I think is important. They're not chaperones, but I think it's really important that our club leaders, you know, one adult for every 10 kids, depending on the age. That is overnight events if they're 13 and over. If they're 12 and under, that a ratio should really be one adult to every 6 youth. And so that would be at camp. That would be, and I know that's tough, but that is, especially at camp and those overnight situations, that is coming from the American Camping Institute, or National Camping Association, American Camping Association, ACA. And so I think it's important that we look at those guidelines. Adult chaperones, especially at national events, must be at least 21 years of age. I think it is important, and I think it is really a good practice to try to have your adult chaperones be at least 21 years of age, even at other events, like at overnight events. You know, when you're talking, if you're just doing a county event that's just a day thing, then I think then you're fine. But you know, to have younger, you know, 18 and over, but overnight should be at least 21. And then when you have, okay, we have a question. So isn't the ratio for shooting and sports activities? There really isn't. There's some guidelines for shooting sports, but there really isn't a specific ratio. And those would be found on our state shooting sports website. This is mostly for overnight events. So, and then unrelated adults and youth, they can stay in the same room if you are like at an overnight event, as long as there's at least one adult for every 2 youth. They never should be on a one-to-one ratio. The only exception to that is if you have a parent-child. So like, you know, a mother-daughter, and then they also should be the same sex. They should always be, you know, if they're unrelated, they must be the same sex. So only female chaperones can stay with female delegates. The only exception is if you have a parent-child situation. Now, granted, for my own, if I was going somewhere and my son was there, I would not let him stay with me. I would make him stay with the kids, but that's just my own. Is it your opinion that chaperones sleeping in cabins with youth are on their own? That's one of those, like at camp, I think personally, I think you probably should have, depending on the age of the kids, you should have an adult in that cabin with the kids, as long as, you know, again, same sex. And as long as there's, you know, at camp, you're not going to run into the issue with, you know, more than one child. But they should always also make sure if an adult goes back to the cabin and there's only one child in that cabin, they need to find either another adult or another youth to go in there with them. That's a big one. That's my personal opinion. The reason I said that, to me, that would be like a 12 and under group. The reason I say that is because things happen in the middle of the night with that age group that probably an adult is the one that's capable of handling rather than a teenager. The adults for overnight events, they need to have gone through go through and have all of their paperwork completed and sent back before they can be a chaperone for an overnight event. And then if you have, this is something for volunteers especially, but I think it's important as staff members, that in case of an emergency, your first priority is to get medical attention for that injured person. Your next priority is to contact the parent or guardian. Then they need to contact, if it's a volunteer, they need to contact that county 4-H professional. And then your job then would be at some point within, I usually like to ask within 24 hours, let me know about that event at the state level. And it can be just a simple email, a simple text, whatever, that's fine. And then the next step would be to prepare that incident report. Okay, any questions on kind of those emergency procedures or chaperones? All right. So I just want to quickly go over a little bit on finances because this is a risk management issue that we are dealing with. And when people ask, again, why we're getting, now granted, I know we haven't been that strict, but it will be getting stricter about finances, but part of that is because of the name and emblem, and that's why we require, because again, it's our reputation, it's our finances. That's why we are so much more accountable. We need to remember that 4-H money raised in the name of 4-H are public funds. They are not private funds because we are a public entity, and so and clubs, that money is public money. So just a couple things about fundraising. Money raised in the name of 4-H must be used for 4-H purposes. And part of that comes, now granted, we do have, and we'll talk about this in the finance, when we talk about finances towards the end of these sessions, but we do have a lot of clubs that try to raise money and give it to other organizations. And there's, if a specific club raises money, the money only goes to that club, or can it go to all clubs? So if it's a specific club raising money for a specific reason, then it stays within the club. Really, if it's one club raising money, then it should stay in that club. If it's, if it's a leaders council or something, then that should benefit the entire program. Okay. So, but yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about, we'll talk more about this, but anyway, a lot of clubs try to, they'll raise money and say, oh, we're going to give it to the Humane Society. Well, that's great, but our 4-H program is also in need of, of funding. And so we just need to just have them think about that, and, think about some different things. I think it's always good to be philanthropic, but maybe there's some things that they could raise money, to do within the county 4-H program or something. And then fundraising should only be conducted to meet a club goal. We don't want clubs out there raising money just to raise money so they can hoard $25,000, which I have had clubs that raised $25,000 and they would hoard it and not use it. So we can't be having that. But again, like I said, we're going to be talking about that at another time. I just wanted you guys to be aware of that, just so we remember that finances and fundraising is part of risk management. Transportation. Avoid transportation of only one youth. Now, sometimes this can be really hard in especially when you are taking I think about we just had the state shooting sports event, and a bunch of, a lot of people traveled up, and, as you're dropping kids off at houses along the way, all of a sudden there's one child left in the car, and it's like, ooh, okay, what do we do now? Try to avoid that as much as possible. And it's not, I don't say that anything, and this is the volunteers too, I don't think anything's going to happen, but if it's just you and that child, there's nobody there to dispute. And, all they have to say is, he or she touched me, and you could be going to jail. And our 4-H program can be in a world of hurt. So we just need to think about those types of things. The use of 15-passenger vans is typically not allowed with youth. I'll be honest with you right now, I could not find this rule. If I know Sharon's on here and Karen's on here, and there's a couple others that have been on staff for a long time. If you guys know if that ever came about, did you guys ever hear about a rule about not being able to use 15-passenger vans with youth? Okay, so so Sharon hasn't heard of this one before. I will tell you, if it is not a rule of the universe, okay, yes, okay, Karen was told no because of a rollover. Okay, so if it's not a university rule, I will tell you that in 4-H, I would prefer you not to use 15 passenger vans. Several reasons. And this all comes from, oh gosh, it's probably 15 years ago. But the vans really have, I mean, they've improved, but they haven't improved that much. And this is only with youth. But they can easily roll. They can easily tip. I had a group of 4-H ambassadors, this was before I came on board, in North Dakota, that were coming back from a retreat in 2 15-passenger vans. The one in the back slid on ice and flipped 5 times, I think. We had one kid lose a finger, and we had another young lady broke her back. That was just one, and that was just the major injuries. There were a lot of other injuries that happened because of that. And that we had a group in North Dakota. It was not a 4-H group, but an Envirothon team was going to the state event. On the way there, they wrecked and the van rolled, and 4 of the 5 young people were killed. And so they are so easily, and so at that point, most universities came back and said, no more 15-passenger vans with anyone under the age of 18. And so that's why, and like I said, I could not find it in North Dakota, in Nevada, but, I honestly, I didn't look that hard, but that's one of those things I'll be looking for. But I would say don't use it. The other piece, transportation form. There is a transportation form and policy that's on the 4-H website under the policies and procedures. So please look that up. It really has some good information. It needs updated like everything else on the website, but it's got good information. Let's see. And then our accident insurance. So accident insurance is highly recommended. I am not sure if you can, I recommend that you do that all 4-H members in Nevada pay the $1 a year for insurance, or if they are in horse, then it's $2 per year for the supplemental accident insurance. It says the county 4-H professional must purchase that insurance. It is, the clubs should not be going on and doing their own insurance. You should be going on and doing a countywide policy. We also do a policy for any special events, like when we send our team to the National Livestock Contest, I'll be purchasing extra insurance for them. But just so you know, basically I tell people this is accident insurance. It will not cover, like if you have a broken bone or something, it's not going to pay for it. It will pay the deductible. It pays like up to $2,500, but it works great if you've got, if you have a sick, like somebody that gets sick at an event. Can that come out of the county budget? It could. A lot of counties, though, just charge the kids. And this is for your 4-H club members, typically. If you're doing a high risk activity at a school or something, you could do that other insurance, which is, I think, my next slide. I lost my place in my other things. Yeah. So, oops, maybe not. Okay. Yeah. Nope. Okay, so there is a special insurance that's like 20, 25, and 30 cents per day per person, and that's what you should be buying that for camp, because what that does is that covers, like when you have a young person that gets that has to go to the clinic because they are severely dehydrated, or when we had at the one camp when we had the person, the lifeguard that hurt their knee, then that insurance would help cover some of those costs. I will tell you too, I had a young person one time at the fair get bucked off her horse, or no, I'm sorry, she was hoof blocking her horse's foot, and the horse came up and hit her, just like went to swat a fly with its foot and hit her in the head with the foot, knocked her out, took an ambulance to the hospital, got cleared, came back, was fine, but came back to the fair. Without my knowledge, they let her back on her horse. In the middle of a class, she fainted and fell off her horse and had to take an ambulance ride back to the fair, or back to the hospital. And that $2 a year insurance covered both of those ambulance rides. They've said that they were two different incidences. And so that's one of those, it's worth it to do. Many states require everybody pay that, and that may come, that may be moved that way in Nevada, not this year and not for the coming year, but I'm going to highly recommend that you do that. And then again, you can buy that entire year, or you can do the individual events. This is not the only company, but I will tell you this is the best company. Or not the best company. This company has a 4-H and cooperative extension division. They have people that that are specifically for 4-H. You can call them up and they know what you're talking about. They understand our language. And I'll be honest, they are a big donor to extension and to 4-H. So American Income Life, and they give you, and they're a great company to work with. Yes. Their CEO, you don't see this very often, but like at our national 4-H conference, the CEO is the one that is there, and he is the one conversing with all of the 4-H professionals from around the country. Anytime, there's been times I've had questions and I've actually called him and he has helped me on that issue. So, you just don't get too much better. And so, that's one that we always tell, and that's the one 4-H works with the most. So, and they will explain the different types of insurance they have on their website. The other nice thing is you fill it out online, they will, and then you go on after your event and then you pay the bill. So just a couple of, I just want to quickly, I've got a few minutes here. I want to quickly talk about some risk management activities. So, and get some feedback, see what you guys think. So at a county 4-H or county horse show, there are several new 4-H horse project members in attendance. One is letting his non-4-H friends ride double on his horse in and out of the arena. Right there, can you guys see that little blunder right there? One 4-H'er has a tie-down clip to the curb chain of his horse's bridle, and one 4-H'er has a cinch that looks like it could break at any time. So what do you guys see are the risk management issues here? There's several. Hopefully people are typing. Okay, non-4-H'ers riding in the arena, yep. Riding double, the tie down, the cinch, yep. A runaway, yeah. So those are things, and as you see those, great, you guys have got it. As you see those, or where are all of the adults? Yes. You need to make sure your volunteers know that if they see things like that, they need to step in and say, nope, not allowed. Okay, so again, we've got, we kind of answered those questions. Here's some other risky situations. Allowing a new 4-H woodworking project member to use a power tool. We've got to teach them basics first. Allowing an experienced electrical project member to experiment with trying to shoot or short out a motor to see if sparks will fly out. We have to think about those types of things. Leaving members unattended in a meeting room. That's sometimes hard to do, but we just need to think about that. Try to have at least another adult. Reprimanding a member for not following an established club rule, but ignoring another member's violation of the same rule. Again, we don't think of that sometimes as a risk management issue, but that's a huge risk management issue. Not properly instructing or supervising a member of a food and nutrition project who tries to cook a meal in a metal container using a microwave oven. We've all seen that happen, because I can almost guarantee every single person on this webinar has done that at one point in their life. Allowing members in a science project to mix together unknown or dangerous chemicals to see what would happen. Another one that you don't think about, but this is again where you run into the issue of not following your position description as a volunteer. When you ask a team leader to fix a tire on your car or mow your lawn during a rabbit club meeting. While it'd be really nice to do, now granted that sounds extreme, but you know what? That could happen, especially if it's during the meeting. If you ask them to do it maybe before or after the meeting is over, then that's a different story. Then that person takes on the liability themselves. But if it's actually during the meeting, then they have then just now put themselves up for liability, and the university will not cover them. Okay, at refusing to admit a boy into your club one day because there just isn't enough room, and then allowing 2 girls to join the next day, or vice versa. That's another big issue, and we run into that sometimes. If a club is, I don't have a problem with clubs limiting the number of kids that they can have, but once it's full, it's full. You cannot accept any other young people. Or forcing a member who cannot swim to try a few laps while at a club outing or at camp, at a local lake or at a pool or something. Allowing a young adult male volunteer to drive a female teen member home after a project meeting. So you can see all of those are some examples of risk management, and you can take the time, yourself to think about, how you would handle those kinds of situations. But these are all things that have happened that maybe, probably didn't result in a lawsuit, but these are all things that have happened. So here's just some of my favorite quotes about risk management. Even a correct decision is wrong when it's taken too late. Wise men say, and not without reason, that whoever wishes to foresee the future might consult the past. So looking at what things have happened. To make a mistake is only human. To persist in a mistake is idiotic. And risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. Okay, so we're getting to the end of risk management, and you've gone over your plan, you've carefully thought out all the angles, you've done it 1,000 times, it comes naturally to you, you know what you're doing, and you've been trained to do this. Nothing can possibly go wrong, right? You need to think again. And hopefully I hear laughter from you guys, because I think that that's just kind of funny. So risk management, something we need to remember, risk management, it's our job, it's your job, it's our volunteers' job. It's even critical that we get our young people thinking, our members thinking about risk management. And so this little mouse has his helmet on, he's thinking about it. All right, any questions related to risk management? Okay, we have about 13 minutes, or no, I'm sorry, more than that, about 17 minutes to do the next section. We're going to talk about, maybe, okay, I've got to get it pulled up. We're going to talk about essential elements. And you will, oops, sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at one time. Okay, so essential elements, you'll hear us talk about essential elements. And what we're talking about there is really, okay, there we go. Okay, so it is, it's one way to explain what we do. So you'll hear it called the big M, or belonging, independence, mastery, and generosity. So I'm going to talk about each one of these and give you some ideas of what that means. I also have some great handouts that I found from other states that I'm going to be sharing with you, that if you wanted, in National Council, that if you wanted to share that with your leaders, these are pieces that are really critical. They've looked at, you'll see 4, you'll see 8, but it all kind of boils down to these 4. So belonging, it's that young people know that they're cared about by others. And so, this is encouraging peer group cohesion. This is why it's really important for clubs and groups to do icebreakers of some kind, to do some kind of team building games, give them social time. I think that, while it gets really tiring for us some days, it's really important, especially for our young people. It is encouraging cross-age linkaging, having that staff and youth bonding. It's okay to talk with the kids, and you're not their friend necessarily, but you are a caring adult that they could hopefully feel like they can come to talk to. The encouraging ties with families and community. This is where our service learning also comes in. They feel like they're a part of the community. And then making small group time available to allow the development of those relationships. It's also, this is where we bring in that need for physical and emotional safety. When a child feels like they belong to a group, then they feel both physically safe within that group and they feel emotionally safe within that group. When you make a young person sometimes go up and sing and dance for their name tag, well, for some kids that may give them a sense of belonging. For other kids, that's not going to give them that sense of emotional safety, and that's really critical. If you look at the current research around belonging too, that is where it emphasizes the importance of those youth having those opportunities for those long-term relationships with a caring adult that's other than their parents. And so that could very well, they're starting to show that is one of the most powerful positive ingredients for a young person growing up to be a successful adult. Some other ways: encourage collaboration and cooperative learning, showing respect for the value of diverse cultures. This is always a great one. If you've got a group that have diverse backgrounds, I think it's always great to have people share. I did a program one time. It was around character education, but it was a group of trio kids, and so they all came from, and it was a largely immigrant population. And so what we did was we talked about, I had everybody share what is one holiday tradition that you brought with you from your culture, from your country, and you continue to do here. What's one food that you continue to eat? And so that way everybody gets that sense of that sense of culture, and that sense of belonging. Again, encouraging those peer relationships. Then we have mastery. So this is to feel and believe that they are capable and successful. Now, my mini soapbox, all I'm going to say is I don't necessarily like the word mastery. To me, mastery means that you are an expert at something, that you've mastered it. But in this case, it just means that they know how to do it and that they are successful. And so this is where it is really important for those hands-on activities. to have that chance, that project or that exhibition, that they get workplace challenge. Sometimes it can be a workplace challenge, but they can take it into context. And this is where it's really good to supplement competition with competitive activities or games so that you can see. Giving them a multifaceted approach to group investigation, experiential learning, and multiple outcomes. I think that that's really important. So you can see if they truly mastered it in a variety of settings. And then focus on those long-term goals of learning. Give them that prompt feedback. Have a model to teach that failure and frustration are learning experiences. I had a group when I was student teaching. I had a group of young people that great kids, but they were, we went to a national contest, or we went to a contest. This was an FFA. So we went to one of our district contests. And as we were driving over for the contest, they were like, oh, I can't, this is going to be such a great contest. I just hope we beat Payette, was the name of their rival chapter. I hope we beat them today. Well, we get done with the contest, and these kids, they're all down. They got second place. They're down in the dumps on the ride back, and just we didn't win, blah, blah, blah. And I stopped and I said, okay, what was your guys' goal when we left this morning? We wanted to win. I said, really? That's what you told me, that you wanted to win? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. Think about it again. And they thought about it, and they're like, we said we wanted to beat Payette. And I was like, okay, so where did Payette place? And they were like, third. And so then their whole attitude kind of changed. And so it's just sometimes we have to remind our young people that, and that's kind of providing that prompt feedback. We have to remind them of what their goals were, those long-term goals. And then also, it's okay to not get first every time. That's not going to make or break. Now, what did you learn and what can you do differently next time to do better? We have independence. So independence is to know that they are able to influence people and events. So this is something that we tend to, this is one, youth adult partnerships is big, thinking about these types of things. Before you make a decision, or this is a good one to talk to your leaders council about, before they make that decision, ask if a youth could make this same decision, and with some guidance. It's really important that we include youth in the planning discussions and encourage input. I know one of the things, like right now we're in the process of rebuilding our ambassador program. Well, I think it's great, and right now we need to get that up and going. As we're moving forward, here's our plan for what we're going to be doing that was created by our staff members. And then once we get that first core group in, I think that's when we bring them in and say, okay, this was what we did. Now, what can we do next time to improve that? And I think those types of things, but in clubs, we need to definitely make sure our youth are involved in that planning from the very beginning in club programming. This is one I find myself at home doing a lot, and I try to stop myself. We need to remember to ask youth to do something instead of telling them to do it. That just is it just is received better. Give a youth responsibility to carry out that responsibility with minimal reminders. And then also, this is another one I think is really important. We need to be able to commend our youth who recognize that limit and come to you for help. Don't yell at them. I think it's great that they have decided, I can't do this on my own. I need help. That to me is important. It's also helping youth explore courses of action or appropriate decisions. I think that's another piece. Let them think about their decisions and what's appropriate. Never deprive the youth of the thrill of overcoming an obstacle. This is one that, I think we all find ourselves, sometimes we'll jump in too quick and do it instead of letting them either fail or succeed or fail. Maintain that close link between independence and responsibility, and share the power of young people through self-governance in significant areas. Then we have generosity. So that's to practice helping others through their own generosity. So this could be the mentoring or the tutoring of cross-age linkages in service and service learning and community service. This is where you have the young people work with the teens work with the young people on that program, how they could do that. Also, they tie their learned skills on how they can be used in positive ways. Respect and encourage bonds of friendship among the young people, among the young people, and then between the staff and the children. It also uses many opportunities to encourage young people to imagine the feelings of others. I think that's always really important. I think it's to think of others and how this is going to affect them, and then highlight the effect of that young person's behavior on others, both positive and negative. Reinforce those gestures of caring and concern, and then ask them to take that responsibility. It is, when we go back and think about these 8, the big M, and think about these 4 essential elements, I look at it and, I have developed so many relationships with my 4-Hers. I have probably more than that. I have several from my time in Idaho the first time that I still keep in touch with, still, love to see their growth. And then I have many that I worked with in Michigan and North Dakota and in Idaho again, that I keep in touch with. And, these are kids that I felt like, were either my little sister, at the time when I first started, they were probably closer to little sister age than child age. But, and it's good. And, nothing better than 20 years later or 10 years later, having one of them come back and say, thank you. It's not that I need the thank you, but it's knowing that I was able to help make a difference in that young person. I had one young person that poor child should have ended up in jail. I had to fire her mother as a 4-H volunteer for she was caught stealing and pled guilty in the whole bit, and she so the girl stayed in 4-H. She dropped out of high school at like 16, moved out of her parents' house. I mean, the fact that she didn't didn't end up pregnant or something. She did get her GED, went into the military, and during this whole time that she's going through all of these issues, I still continued, Randy Joe, let's go, let's go to teen conference. Let's go to, I would take her with me to the various 4-H events. I made sure that she got to those, whether, depending on how we had to pay for them, because, obviously she didn't have a lot of money, but I wanted to make sure she still had that experience. And, she's just an amazing woman. She just finished, graduated. She went into the military. She just graduated from Michigan State in landscape architecture, has 2 kids, great mom. It's just I like to, that's where we get our, that's where you get, know that you're making a difference. We don't see it right away. We see it later in life. All right. So youth development experiences can be transformational when we provide those young people so they can take what they learn in 4-H and figure out how to transfer that knowledge into their regular lives and not their 4-H lives. If we give those young people that opportunity to belong, to master skills through experiences, to give them that opportunity to influence others and learn the meaning of service. There is, and this is still, I double checked it, it is still a good link. There is some great information. There's actually some curriculum out there on the essential elements. Excuse me. There's each one of, there's actually 8 elements in that one, and each one has 2 lesson plans, curriculum. If you cannot find that, let me know. They're great to do at Leaders Council meetings. They're just simple activities, take no more than 15-20 minutes each. You could do, one of those before a Leaders Council meeting or during a Leaders Council meeting to start teaching this concept to our volunteers, and why it's so important for kids to feel like they belong to an organization or belong to a group, why it's important for them to feel, all of these different things. So to have that sense of generosity. Any questions? All right. Hey, I got you guys out on time today. It's 2:28. So if you have not had a chance to share with me your information in the chat box, please do so, because I know I did not catch hardly anybody that was on here beforehand, because I've been talking the whole time. So the next session is going to be on October 18th. So it's not 2 weeks from today. We had with scheduling and stuff. We're going to be talking about 4-H enrollment and reporting, and then evaluating for impact. And I will tell you, the evaluation that I'm going to talk about is not full-blown evaluation like you see the extension educators doing. These are ways that you can evaluate programs that you're doing in your county. Very simple things, so you can just see if they're helping, if it's making a difference. And so that one is October 18th, same time. I'll send out the reminder. So thank you, everybody. Anything else? And yes, all of the PowerPoints. So what I will do is I will do exactly what I did last time, where I will get the recording of the video up on YouTube, send out that link, and I will send the link to the PowerPoints that are in Dropbox. If you have a problem getting them in Dropbox, please let me know. I can't email them out because our listserv won't take it. But thank you, and have a great day.